You're listening to Friday Live on Nebraska Public Media. I'm Penelope Morrow, glad to be here with you. My first guest this morning is pianist and composer Masa Ishikawa. With many ties to Nebraska, including studies at UNL, residency in Nebraska City at the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center, and witnessing the annual crane migration of 2015, it makes perfect sense that Ishikawa's most recent album is titled Migration, with tracks that reference nature most Nebraskans have seen. Masa Ishikawa, thanks for coming to Friday Live.
Good morning, Penny. Thanks so much for the introduction. Appreciate it.
I understand that in addition to music, you also enjoy photography, specifically nature photography. I imagine witnessing birds kind of comes with both that sound element and also the visual element. Can you talk about that kind of collaboration between visual and audio?
Specifically for the when I went to see the Nebraska migration, Nebraska's Platte River to see the cranes, and then what I saw, thousands of cranes, and then also making those really sound around dusk. It was just something that I will never forget. And then those are the things that I would like to capture in photography, but also later remembering that sound. And then I would say just the sources to be inspired to make music.
Yeah, there's a track on the album that is, the album's title that is Migration.
Migration.
What do you hope people will hear through that music in addition to the birds that you witnessed?
Oh, you mean in addition to that song?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this entire album that I released a couple months ago, as it was introduced, is titled Migration. So that Migration is for the cranes, Sandhill cranes, but conceptually the album is based on dedication to various critters. The reason I wanted to make this album was probably I've been more in the day-to-day life that I really think that I am very thankful for those creatures. So many things that we are connected in a sense in our daily lives we don't see is in a direct way sometimes, but we are all connected in this earth, and then just so much to thank for. And then the sound, and then also the sound, some of the sound of the creatures that associate with my memories and childhood memories that will never, it's a memorable ones. So I just wanted to capture everything, just really dedicating to various creators that I selected in this album.
You also teach. You're an assistant professor of jazz piano at James Madison University in Virginia.
Yep.
They say, one of the best ways to learn throughout your career is to teach. Would you say that you learn from your students?
Yes, yeah. I 100% strongly support that. Like one of the things I really love about teaching is actually to be taught by students. I really like that approach of I'm hoping to teach something the way I do too. I try not to teach in a sense, so to say do this, but what I say, what I do is something that students take as, oh, this person was doing this as a way of, I could try this. It is, I would advise, you can try those things, but those are the things I learned from my students. They never teach me in a sense, but what they do, what they say, what they live their lives inspire me to try to do things like how they do and then what they said. And so something like to take. So yes, I agree. I learn from them every day.
Tying it back to the nature element, what would you say you've learned from animals like cranes and cicadas, like musical animals?
Well, the musical portion is always beautiful. The critters, they make just a sound that we cannot produce. And then it's just something that it's just very magical about it. But also, to me, learning from the critters and creatures is just to the fact that they live on, their moment, like each moment. Not that we don't, but then there's so many times in the societies, in our societies, just to think about future, think about tomorrow, think about other things, and not focusing on the current moment. But when I see butterflies and anything that just making sounds, they're just living in the moment. That's a great lesson. I always be reminded every single time I see, and then just so appreciate of it.
like I alluded to, there are other tracks on the album that reference different sorts of nature. The Hotaru, or fireflies, higurashi, evening cicadas, and when a cardinal sings. Does this music all try to depict those birds and bugs in like kind of a programmatic way, or is it more like the animals are inspiring that music?
Yes, it's both. For instance, the cardinal sings. It's just a sound of cardinal that I heard outside of my place I live, and then I recorded. And then also the pattern that they make, sound and rhythmic things, that's something I integrated in my compositions rhythmically, and then try to kind of like replicate the sound and stuff. So it's kind of both. Yes.
You grew up in Japan and you came here to the U.S. to study and went to Seattle after you were here studying for a time, correct?
Yes. Now, Seattle was my very first state I studied. Started studying music formally, and then Nebraska was my last stop to be a student. And I went to University of Nebraska-Lincoln to get my doctoral degrees in compositions back in 2012 till 2016.
What brought you out here?
It's just that the time I was studying, and then I wanted to study with the professor that I used to teach here. And then also when I came to Lincoln for auditions, I really loved the city. And then all my time, all the years that I spent, 3 years and an extra 1 year after graduation here, was something I will never forget. And it's so nice to be here today too.
One final question.
Yes.
You grew up in Fukushima and came here to the U.S. in 2003, and then the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant meltdown happened in 2011, which prompted you to write a suite for jazz orchestra and strings. What were you doing here in the U.S. when that happened? Where were you?
Yeah, when that happened, actually that was 2011, and then that happened in March. I was pursuing, this was before I came to Lincoln, like a year before I came to Lincoln, I was studying my master's degree in jazz compositions at the University of South Florida in Tampa. So the time differences between Tampa and Japan, that time was like around like 15 hours. So like I didn't understand fully until the morning I opened up the computer, and there's a time difference, and there's images of like disaster images, and then now it's gradually connected with this is something happened in Japan that in a current moment at that time, and then it was just sort of striking, and it's just a really sad event. And then it's a human disaster for the nuclear Daiichi power plant, but also the natural disaster, the earthquake and tsunami. So it's a double things, and it happened pretty close to my area I grew up. And then that changed a lot of things, my perspectives of my life and what it really means that I'm here and that was there. I was not there. And then I'm studying and music while other people were suffering there and stuff. So I just wanted to do my best to express how I was thinking, and then how I could raise awareness of that. It's still happening, and people who suffered from that. So yes.
The ecological impact of the disaster was massive, and I remember at the time the images being so striking of dead animals and of dying nature. Do you feel like witnessing any of those images of the place where you grew up is in this work? Is inside of this that care?
It's not in this one, but then I think the overall conceptual, like the power of nature and stuff. So, it happened like almost like 14, 15 years ago already, because 2026. But some of the areas, the nature restored by itself and stuff, and then just the power of nature, and then those animals that once that was so impacted by those disasters, but now they're coming back. So to me, it's just the overall general message of like through this album. It's not directly in this album, but it's just really power, and it's just so powerful. Those creatures and nature itself has a lot of power to heal itself, and it's really something that I don't want to forget about. Just we are getting a lot of things from them in day-to-day life.
Masa Ishikawa's music connects to the human experience. His newest album is titled Migration. The release date is March 3rd. His piano playing and his original compositions were inspired by sandhill cranes, cicadas, fireflies, cardinal, and more. Masa, great to have you back here in Nebraska, and congratulations on the new album.
Thank you so much, Vinny. Thanks so much for everything. Thanks so much for everybody.
You can find out more about Masa and his music by linking through the Friday Live page at nebraskapublicmedia.org.